Once, there was a man who held the power of the gods at his fingertips and the weight of the world on his shoulders. His name was Julius Robert Oppenheimer, and his legacy would be eternal, not for what he saved, but for what he unleashed. The childhood of a genius. He was born on April 22, 1904, in New York City, into a wealthy and cultured Jewish family. From a young age, he showed extraordinary intelligence. He learned quickly, spoke multiple languages, and devoured books with a hunger that bordered on pain. He wasn't the most sociable child. Thin, somewhat awkward, often ill, he found refuge in science, poetry, and philosophy. His childhood was shaped by rigorous education, but also immense intellectual freedom. At the Ethical Culture School, where he studied, ethics were valued above religion and critical thinking over obedience. This would leave a mark on his character. Oppenheimer would always be a man torn between pure thought and the moral decisions that thought demanded. After a dazzling academic career at Harvard, where he graduated with honors in just 3 years, he left for Europe to study theoretical physics. He trained in Göttingen, Germany, alongside the founders of quantum mechanics. He shared classrooms with Heisenberg, Pauli, and Dirac, and studied under Max Born. He was an active participant in the birth of modern physics. His talent stood out, though his solitary and sometimes arrogant nature kept him at a distance from others. 2. The voice of the atom. Back in the United States, Oppenheimer became a professor at Berkeley and Caltech, where he founded one of the most prestigious theoretical physics programs in the country. His lectures were intense, poetic, and hypnotic. He taught quoting the Greeks, Shakespeare, and the Upanishads. His mind burned with uncommon brilliance, blending the logic of a scientist with the sensitivity of a poet. But he was also a tormented soul. He battled depression, had nightmares, and wrestled with a profound existential loneliness. Meanwhile, the world around him was falling apart. Europe was on fire with the rise of fascism. Hitler had taken power, Mussolini marched on Rome, and Franco bombed his own people. Horrified, Oppenheimer gravitated toward leftist circles. He never officially joined the Communist Party, but his social circle was full of sympathizers. His brother Frank, his sister-in-law, close friends, and especially his great love, Jean Tatlock, a brilliant, melancholic psychiatrist and committed political activist. For Robert, the fight against fascism was a moral imperative. He donated money to the Spanish Republic, attended activist meetings, and defended the oppressed. These decisions, made from ethical conviction, would later be used against him. 3. The nuclear awakening. In 1938, a discovery shook the scientific world. German physicists Otto Hahn and Lise Meitner successfully split a uranium atom. Nuclear fission had been demonstrated. In theory, this phenomenon could release colossal amounts of energy. Physicists immediately grasped what this meant, and some of them were terrified. In 1939, Leo Szilard and Eugene Wigner, 2 Hungarian refugee physicists, wrote a letter to President Roosevelt warning that the Nazis might be building an atomic bomb. Albert Einstein signed the letter, giving it enormous political weight. Roosevelt responded by creating a secret committee to investigate the possibilities. This was the seed of the Manhattan Project, one of the most ambitious scientific and military undertakings in human history. 4. The Manhattan Project is born. By 1942, the project had grown so large it required a centralized lab. General Leslie Groves, a pragmatic, authoritarian engineer, was appointed to lead it from the military side. He chose Oppenheimer as scientific director. The choice surprised many. Oppenheimer had no experience managing large projects and wasn't the most famous physicist in the country. But Groves saw something in him: a quick mind, contagious passion, and a clear vision of what needed to be done. Under his leadership, the Los Alamos laboratory was built from scratch in the New Mexico desert. Isolated, secret, protected by the military, it became home to more than 4,000 people, including some of the brightest minds of the 20th century: Enrico Fermi, Richard Feynman, Niels Bohr, Hans Bethe, Edward Teller, among many others. Their objective was clear, but monumental: to build a bomb based on nuclear fission before Hitler did. To achieve that, they had to solve problems never before faced: enriching uranium, synthesizing plutonium, designing implosion mechanisms, calculating detonation timing down to microseconds. Everything had to be done in secret under extreme pressure in the middle of a world war. For 3 years, Los Alamos was a crucible of brilliance and anxiety. Scientists worked tirelessly, driven by the fear of being outpaced. Camaraderie and conflict coexisted. Oppenheimer became a symbol, inspiring, demanding, deeply human. But he grew increasingly thin, tired, and inward. The Trinity. On July 16, 1945, at 5:29 a.m., in the Alamogordo Desert of New Mexico, the first atomic bomb was tested. They called it Trinity, after a John Donne poem Oppenheimer loved. When the bomb exploded, the sky turned white like salt. A mushroom of fire rose 12 kilometers high. The shock wave was felt miles away. No one on Earth had ever seen anything like it. Watching the apocalyptic light, Oppenheimer quietly quoted the Bhagavad Gita. If the radiance of 1,000 suns were to burst at once into the sky, that would be like the splendor of the Mighty One. And then, more solemnly, now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. 6. Hiroshima and Nagasaki. On August 6, 1945, the United States dropped the little boy bomb on Hiroshima. 3 days later, Fat Man was dropped on Nagasaki. Over 200,000 people died, many instantly, others in the days that followed from burns and radiation. Japan surrendered. The war was over. Oppenheimer was celebrated as a national hero. He had helped end the bloodiest war in history, but he did not feel victorious. He began speaking of morality, of responsibility, of fear. When he met President Harry Truman, he told him, "Mr. President, I feel I have blood on my hands." Truman was enraged. He told his aides, "I don't want to see that crybaby again." 7. The trial. After the war, Oppenheimer became a scientific advisor to the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission. He advocated for international control of nuclear weapons and strongly opposed the development of the hydrogen bomb. That put him at odds with powerful military and political figures. During the Cold War, the fear of communism intensified. His past political ties resurfaced as a threat. In 1954, Oppenheimer was subjected to a brutal security hearing. For weeks, he was interrogated, spied on, and betrayed. One of the key witnesses against him was Edward Teller, his former colleague. The verdict was devastating. His security clearance was revoked. He was publicly humiliated and politically exiled. 8. The silence. After the trial, Oppenheimer withdrew from public life. He returned to teaching, to reading, to walking alone by the sea. He accepted the Enrico Fermi Award in 1963, a symbolic gesture of redemption by the government, but by then, he was a ghost of what he once was. He died of throat cancer in 1967, at the age of 62. 9. The legacy. Decades later, in 2022, the U.S. government officially reversed the 1954 decision, acknowledging that Oppenheimer had been the victim of political injustice.